collection, and he's going to present some of those to you here tonight. Adrian Wiggins.
That's fabulous. Before I begin, I too would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and to Indigenous people gathered here today. And one of the things I can share with you that I know, but I've learned recently, is digital literacy is a very big challenge in Indigenous communities. And that is, I think, something to think about with social impact, if we get to do it. So Joe mentioned that this talk started with this idea I had about sharing these tricks that I'd learned along the way. Oh, actually, before I do get started, I just want to say I see in the audience many luminaries that I have known for many years, and I just want you to know that I'm intimidated, and I know you won't judge me much. I've tried to raise the grade since Joe and I first spoke, but I'll start with where we started, which was I've got these ideas about these little things that I do in my practice as a designer, but which aren't about design. And they help me succeed, I think. And I think, there's something in sharing those things, the stuff that no one tells you, like it's really tiny, tiny, tiny stuff. Like, does that go forward? Writing upside down. Right? Who can write upside down? Right, it's good, isn't it? What do you do with it? Nothing. Okay, right. All right. Okay, well, before I could write upside down, I could read upside down. And I learned to read upside down when I was reading my children bedtime stories. And they were sort of across from me, and I had to put the book in front of them so I could trace the words with my finger and help them learn to read by reading the word and pointing to it with my finger. So I learned to read upside down. And I found this enormously useful working with clients, because you could put the document in front of the client, you could sit across the table from the client, and you could point to the words and say them. And the client would be a little bit, just for a moment, like, what's happening? Hang on. They're reading the words upside down. And there was this little moment, not long, but it didn't last long, of dazzle. So I thought, okay, right, I'm onto something here. I better kind of lift it up a notch. So sometimes the documentation's wrong and you need to annotate it. So I thought, I'll learn to write upside down and write the annotations upside down so the person can still see them. And this really takes them somewhere else, and they actually stop listening to you, so it's not very useful. Because why is this person writing upside down? But what I have started doing recently is, to the horror of my colleagues at Pollen, is doing wireframes upside down, with writing upside down and arrows upside down, and it's in reverse. And I've actually found that they're tidier than my other wireframes, and they're a little bit better thought through. So I think there's something in switching sides of brain as well. But anyway, there's probably enough on that. The other things that I thought I could share with you when I was talking to Joe, I was thinking, I've got all these great ideas about like spreadsheet functions. People need to know about spreadsheet functions. Like, yeah, they do. This is magic stuff. You can do magic with these things. Who here works with Google Analytics? Right? And you get your data down, don't you? You get the data out of Google Analytics because Google doesn't give you enough anymore. Right? So you've got to kind of work with the data. And the way to do it is with these magic words here, filter, VLOOKUP, and SUMIF. But I'm not going to tell you about those tonight. Joe then helpfully sent me this, right, which is, who can tell, this was a mystery to me. I thought, what is this? Looks like a whole lot of teeth.
It's cut blue tack.
It's pre-cut blue tack. Mind blown. All these years I've been, slowly tearing off supersized chunks of blue tack, getting through the blue tack too quickly. This is, I think, the way we're going to consume less blue tack apart from anything else, but just looking prepared. And by the way, things organised neatly, anyone? So Joe showed me this and I thought, man, we've got so much good material to share at IxDA. We've got like 20 slides of this kind of stuff. Rock and roll. So I sent Joe this extraordinarily long list of things that I'd collected over the years. Just back to the luminaries for a moment. Donna, have you learned something yet?
Yeah.
There it is. That was my personal challenge for tonight. I was going to tell Donna something she hasn't heard. Slide 3. Okay. So I thought I was going pretty well there for a while, and then Beck Hendry said, "What's the title?" And I said, "It's We Go Go's Ninja Tricks," which is kind of a bit of a joke because I'm actually a pirate, not a ninja. But anyway, then you asked me, I think, what my subtitle was, and this is in a kind of like a chat or something, I think. Anyway, so I thought I'd better come back with a good sort of like subtitle, fill in the gap, what to expect. So I came up with this: how to win an experienced design knife fight on a night with no moon. Right? Because that's what you need to do to become a luminary, right, Ian? Yeah. So I thought this is what I'm going to aim for, but immediately I started to think about that. I thought, oh, hang on, like you can't tell people, stuff like write upside down. Like you don't win fights writing upside down. You can't tell people about, functions in spreadsheets. That's not going to cut it. Cut up blue tack. I mean, really. So I had to lift the game, and that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to actually come up with things that are better than writing upside down, if you can believe that. And I'll check in with you at the end. And it's, by the way, it's version 0.1, I think, beta. So I just wanted to let you know this is the first run of this material. It could be a bit shit. So you will let me know by sleeping or yawning or what have you. But if anyone goes like this, then I'll know to just wind up quickly. So I think the first thing I would want to share with you was this piece of advice given by a not very famous writer. Called Dennis Palumbo, and he's best known for co-writing, I think, 2 episodes of Welcome Back, Kotter. That's the kind of writer we're talking about. So I'm not doing him any disservice by that. I'm just saying, like, I was putting him in a position to say that the advice he gave is just so fabulous. So what advice would you give to novice writers? And his answer was, keep giving them you till you is what they want. And I would say that's kind of how I've lived my life. I've got to the point where I can put this on my LinkedIn profile, and that, I think, is a measure of me giving you that. I've got away with it. I've got there. So I'm currently experienced design director at Pollen. Before that, I ran my own business for about 6 years. Looking back over my career, I've been working in areas of culture institutions, galleries, libraries, archives, museums, sport. I've done car racing, yacht racing, bike racing. I've done work in classifieds. I've done houses, cars again. I've done dates, as in romance, which was great for when I was working on it because I really needed a date. And I learned everything there was to know about getting a good date, so I had a great date. I went out with an acrobat for a while. Yeah. This isn't in the script. Anyway, I might skip the rest of this material. So I've been in UX since 2006. Before that, I was a commercial web producer since 2000. I've been working on information architecture since 1998. I've been working in corporate data and systems since 1996. In print production since 1995. I have no formal training whatsoever. And I would say I'm one of those people who probably would have benefited from being coached and mentored, but I have had none. So I have had to struggle through my own problems pretty much by myself, and what I'm sharing with you tonight is some of the lessons I've learned along the way by making a mess and getting it wrong and creating trouble for me and for other people. I guess one of the first things I've learned about myself was I actually have one of these. So it's an innie, but really I'm an outie. And you know the metaphor about being innies and outies? Who's heard of that before? No one's heard this? Oh, okay, right. So, are you an in-house person or are you an agency person? Right, so, yeah. I am definitely an agency person, right? But I've got that belly button, so I've been a bit confused for a while. By the way, this is a slide that my wife runs in a kind of similar talk that she gives, and she's definitely an innie, if you know her, and she kind of laughs at me being an outie and funny conversations we had. And I guess one of the things too I've discovered over the years is what's the best team to be on, and I guess we all start out wanting to be on the best team, and many of you are on teams, by the way. You're probably in a great team, and you may be in the Beach Boys, which has, this is number 2 Pet Sounds in 500 Great Records of All Time. It's a fantastic album, it's crazy stuff, came out in 1965, I think, and it was kind of ahead of its time. It was their kind of answer to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band, or was it the other way around? I forget. It was this amazing breakthrough as a musical piece. So you would say, oh, that's one of the great teams to be in, the Beach Boys, but actually, none of that music was really created by the Beach Boys. It was mostly created by Brian Wilson with these people. And they are called the Wrecking Crew. Has anyone heard of the Wrecking Crew? Yep. So the Wrecking Crew was a session band that worked out of a Los Angeles studio. And basically what would happen is the big acts of the 60s would just go in, and these guys would be there. And so this is the band behind the sounds of great hit songs from people like Mamas and Papas, even Simon and Garfunkel, Tina Turner and Ike Turner, on and on and on. All these bands. They have 31 #1 hits. So when I think about which team I want to be on, I sometimes think, well, I'm a bit torn actually, I've never really decided. And by the way, I'm not on either of these teams, although I think Pollen's pretty good. But I think I'd rather be on this team. I'd rather be on the team full of guns and people who could do anything. And that was the kind of musicians that they were. They were very versatile, they were all classically trained, they were jazz musicians, and they turned out all these fabulous hits for people like Phil Spector. But some people too did jump ship. So some people kind of got out of the wrecking crew and became stars in their own right. So who here is a Glenn Campbell fan? Right, he crossed over. I guess one of the things to think about for me too is over time whether I'm a T-shaped person. Have you heard the thing about T-shaped people? You know, being kind of a bit thin on a lot of things and deep on something. And I guess I've never really been a T-shaped person. Kind of struggled to be a T-shaped person, and I guess I'm in the end become a ZYXWVU kind of person. And I did write that backwards, as you will no doubt note. And I think that's something that over time has been something that's helped me become who I am, I suppose, by being quite interested in diverse skills and not being really narrow on any particular thing. It means I'm not very good at any particular thing, but I can make a mess again, and I know enough to be dangerous in a lot of areas. Which leads me to this, which is, I think it's really important that we read a lot about our trade. And this is about a quarter of my bookshelf. Some of these titles you will recognise, I hope. Some fabulous books are here. One of the first books I bought, and visual display of quantitative information from Edward Tufte. I've got the first edition of Information Architecture. So I've got a broad interest. I've always tried to consume all these books, but I'm also trying to synthesise that knowledge and bring it into my work. And I guess that's why I'm actually not very good at anything, but it means I can converse sufficiently to be in most conversations with anyone and sort of let them think that I know enough that I could help them. One of the things I have worked on over time, is this useful by the way? Yeah. Okay. Because I was worried, because sometimes people present and they're presenting stuff that's like a fantastic product that they've worked on, all these great trade skills, methods and that sort of stuff. So I haven't really got any of that, so I'm a bit worried. Just putting it out there.
No, and people are taking pictures.
Okay, good. Next slide. Oh, so the thing to do with all this kind of stuff is this actually, copy, transform, combine, which is a really powerful skill in design, in any kind of design. And I think when I have done my best work, it's by sneaking off to one of those fabulous sites that shares great designs and stealing some stuff and transforming it and recombining it. And I do that with practices as well. So I take stuff that Google might put out about content strategy, and I take stuff that someone else might put out about digital engagement, and I kind of jam those things together and kind of hack them until they fit, until I've got something that does both kinds of work. The sequence of slides doesn't work very well, by the way, so this is one of those moments where the next slide doesn't quite make sense, but so I just thought I'd let you know. The next thing I think is really important in our work is understanding why we're doing what we're doing for our clients and probably for ourselves too. So if I know this is in such widespread conversation, you start with why, but I just really want to emphasize how important it is to know why you're doing the work you're doing, why your business, if you're a consultant, is working with that business, like what's the case for it. Why is that business investing their money in that thing? Why are you investing your time in that thing? I think it's so important to have a good why in our work so that we're motivated, we've got purpose in our work. Simon Sinek has helpfully provided this very simple diagram, why, how, and what, which is a way to navigate from why to the what. So there is a laddering that can get you from one place to the other. The other fabulous book I would recommend is sort of similar in title, but very different in, I guess, intent. So Start With Why is about storytelling, it's about purpose, it's about who we are as humans, what matters to us, why we do the things we do. The other one that I think is great is Why We Buy, which is about us as animals, about us as social creatures, about us needing to fit in, about comfort and consolation and all those sorts of things that we need as creatures. And it's a great study of humans in aggregate shopping in malls and it's kind of a how as well. What's interesting in that book is the same kind of model applies. Why are you shopping? How can you afford that? What are you buying? So some of the same kind of models apply. I better go back and see what my next slide is so I can prepare the segue. Oh, this is the other great book I'm reading at the moment. Introduction to OKRs. Is anyone reading that? This is great. This is gold. OKRs are what companies, you may have heard of these people, Google, Twitter, use to manage their objectives and their progress towards a goal. O is for objectives. KR is for key results. The proposition of this book is really simple. I suggest you go and read it. It's free from O'Reilly. Projects will be greatly motivated and supported by having a few key objectives that really rally the team back to why. It comes from why. And key results are, for each of those, let's say 3 or 4. By the way, this isn't my material. I'm just processing forward to you what Christina Wadke says. So objectives, 3 or 4 of those, rallying stuff, motivating stuff, simple, fantastic ideas. Key results, really fine-grained, quantitative things, let you know if you're achieving those things and you're on track. 3 or 4 of those for each of the 3 or 4 objectives. And that's how you measure how you're going and how you know you're going in the right direction. And when you tick off the key results, you've achieved the objective. So I guess that's the book of today for me, because I told a client about that. And the client kind of took to it. Is this useful?
Yes.
Okay. I'd have to ask for some coaching, I think, on the spot. Get some coaching.
You're doing great.
Believe in yourself, Wiggins.
Right, I'm going to keep giving them me till they say stop. Yeah. I had a slide on storytelling, but I took it out. I'm sorry, ran out of time. Reading all those books, you come across some fantastic things that really change the way you think. And this is one for me. I read this in a book by Ben Hammersley called 64 Things to Know About the Future. It was published in 2013 or 2011 or something like that. It's great reading books about the future that are about 5 years old. But this, I think, is timeless. This is called, this fellow on the left is a guy called John Boyd, who's regarded as, I'm just going to get a bit military for a while, everyone, I'm sorry. Just want to put that out there. He's regarded as one of the great military tacticians of the 20th century. This is what Ben Hammersley shares. And he invented this tactical system called, what's called the Boyd loop, OODA, Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It's got a really nifty name, doesn't it? And it's what fighter pilots in the US Air Force, this is their model for winning air combat. And essentially it's about, it's a lot more complicated than this, by the way, but this is kind of the summary view. Essentially, it's about observing the context that you're in, knowing your context, knowing what the other actor is doing, and really orienting yourself in the environment. Oh, that's the second one. Orient is the second one. So observe is taking the content, taking the facts, taking the observations, and kind of just become familiar. Orient is, okay, what am I going to do? Where are the options for me? What's next for me? Decide is make a decision and then immediately act on it, and then do the whole thing again. And this you may really reasonably say, well, hang on, that's kind of what we do all the time, right? That's that OKR stuff you're just talking about. Wasn't that how businesses do things, just normally? But I think the key thing about this, and this is why John Boyd was the strategist that he is not that he had this loop. The point that he made was that you succeed or you win by having a higher or a lower frequency than your opposition. So if you're cycling at a faster rate, you're able to take in more material and make more decisions, and you can operate in a way that's faster and more nimble than the opposition. And if you're going slower, you can be more reserved, you can see what the busy opposition is doing and make your more considered decisions. So in my business, there's a kind of quarterly kind of rhythm to things. Many of us in businesses where there's quarterly rhythm. So I use this on a monthly basis to decide what I'm going to do in my team. So it's a bit of like, well, what worked that month, what didn't work, what should we do differently next month? We actually do an OODA loop on things that are working or not working for us in the team. Then there's this. I just have to take you here. I'm sorry. I should have given you a trigger warning on this, but anyway. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for this slide. But it sets up the next slide, which is this one. You may remember there's a sequence in Top Gun. Those of you who have watched it, where there's an air combat situation where you can see this OODA loop in action. By the way, and of course Maverick and Goose get shot down. But just before they get shot down, there's this moment where Maverick says in a really dramatic voice, "It's too close for missiles. I'm switching to guns." And this is my wife's slide, actually. I just got to put it out there. I've stolen my wife's slide. Her point is, sometimes you should, how sometimes you're operating at a distance from the target of your conversation or interest or inquiry. Like you're sending someone an email. It's like, no, don't send them an email. Go over and talk to them. It's that kind of thing. So when you want to influence people, you can't really influence them by shooting missiles at them from a distance. What you need to do is actually get up close. This one's not working. We can move on. You want this one? Okay, right. Okay. Okay. So the idea is that you need to get close to people. You actually need to get really close. You need to get close so you could observe them and you can have a conversation in their kind of in their ear. And that's kind of the point of this slide. I'm going to give my wife some feedback though. I don't know if it's really working. And this is my last slide on this kind of bent, by the way. This is something from Young Henry's where I was pictured on my bike, and there's this fabulous little bit of graffiti up on the wall. And I think this is one of the biggest bits of advice I give to myself. Don't work with dicks, and don't be a dick. And if you've left this room tonight knowing one thing, this is the worst thing to be as a person. I've been one, by the way. And it's also really hard to work around people like that, who are dicks. And dick for me means they're negative and they're not listening and they're you know, all the things that dicks are. Well, you know, it's a position in life, right? So I'm just saying, don't be one. But how can you not be one? I think the way to do it, and there's so many fabulous things that Beck shared earlier about the qualities of someone who's helping someone else, and really fabulous things that you shared. And I think the thing that I have found hardest for me over time is to listen to people, and that's because I grew up on a farm with dogs for friends, and as an only child. And so I didn't really learn to speak English until I went to school in Dubbo at the age of 7, but it meant that I just really didn't know how to listen to people. I wasn't really familiar with human society. I'm just proud that I can stand in front of you today. Because I've learned to listen. That's the thing. I've learned to listen. And what I do, in fact, is I try so hard at listening because I've learned through my mistakes of not listening to people, I'll tell you a few of those, that it's really brutal on a relationship with a client, with a friend, with a loved one when you don't listen to them. On a project, it can be really, really bad for the budget because the client is saying something to you and you're listening, but you're starting to already process, and this is me, this is the lesson I've had to learn. You're processing it and you might miss the third sentence that they say because you're thinking about something and you're not listening anymore. And you miss the third sentence. And the third sentence might represent $20,000 worth of scope 3 months into the project. And because you didn't listen, you missed that crucial piece of information that let you avoid that outcome. That's a kind of practical thing, I suppose, about projects. But one of the things I do, and I had to train myself to do this, is whenever I'm speaking to someone and they start speaking, it doesn't matter where I am in my sentence or my idea, I just stop talking and I start listening. I don't always do it that well, but that's what I try to do. So my one of my colleagues at work, the UX designer who's working for me, I told her this, and now we do this to each other. So she'll start saying something to me, and I'll make a response, and I'll start saying something, and she'll say something, and I'll stop speaking, and then she stops speaking. We sort of sit there looking at each other like, who's going to speak first? I'm so busy listening, no one's speaking. Anyway, I think the other quality that's really important to succeed in your career and with other people is saying thank you. If you can't say thank you to someone, people feel unacknowledged. They feel that you haven't seen the value in the work that they've done or the contribution they've made. So I would just say saying thank you and being grateful generally is a really powerful place to be as a human. And for us all to be really more civil to each other, but also to do better work, by the way. The other thing I think is really important is being curious. Maybe this is back to book reading too, but I've never stopped being interested in new ideas or things I don't understand, or at least within the sphere of the work. Like I draw the line at quantum physics and stuff like that. I've just got to be practical. But in the sphere of our work, it's so important to me to be curious about the people we're working with and their world, their domain. Learning about the domain of a client and the customers of that client is about curiosity, about practices, how we do our work. I think curiosity about new ways of working is so powerful for developing ourselves as practitioners. How am I going for time, Joe? 5 minutes. Should we skip a few? I will talk about one more, which is empathy. When you see children displaying empathy to each other, it is just one of the most beautiful, powerful moments you can witness in humanity. When a child, like a 6 or a 7-year-old, consoles another child, it's so powerful. And it's not that different for adults either. I think when we show empathy for each other and an understanding for the other person, even when we think they're a dick, it can be quite powerful, quite a transforming thing. So I think empathy is, and It's a trait about forgiveness, really, and understanding. So I would just say that empathy is very important, not just to design practice, in other words, understanding the context of the customer or the user group, but also to us as practitioners. Being empathetic with people who we find difficult is I think, very, very, well, it's helped me. It's helped me. It's helped me. The other thing I think is really important is focus and attention. I would go on to say a few more things about focus and attention, but I won't. I'll skip a few slides and kind of cut to the chase. This is about focus, this one's about status, this one's about, get off the burning oil rig. If you're on one of these things, get off, right? If you are in one of those places where shit's going wrong, get out of there. And I won't say where it was, but I've been in one of those places where shit wasn't working and I got out of there. It was the best thing I did. I would never tell you where it was. That would be to say too much. Resilience is important. This is a great thing from Beyond Blue. I'm just going to skip over this one, but go and think about resilience, because sometimes you're going to land on your ass and it's going to be a shitty moment in your career or your life, and you've got to pick yourself up and keep going. And that's about resilience. So there's a lot of factors to resilience. Beyond Blue's got a great post on that. Purpose, finding purpose. No one is going to help you with your purpose problem. It's your problem. You need to find your way to purpose. I have nothing more to say on this. So that was enigmatic, wasn't it? That wasn't a very good one. Some great phrases to work with. How might we? A lot of you, I imagine, use how might we?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so how might we? That framing question. I think there's another important phrase to chuck in, which is yes and, which comes from improvised theatre. And it's called additive something. Additive, right? So when someone makes an idea, puts an idea out, you say yes, and you add to it. The next most important phrase I think you can use in design is so that, because all these great ideas have to be to an outcome, and that's why we would use so that. Actually, I'm going to help you with the purpose thing. I am. That was a bit rubbish, wasn't it? Finding purpose, I think, is about understanding value, and understanding not just value for you, but understanding value for others. This is Harvard Business Review's value pyramid created by Bain. And it's sort of essentially a rebooted Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you've got a whole lot of functional stuff down here, emotional stuff down here. Up here, you get into the purpose stuff. So navigating your way to purpose can actually be about really finding value, where value is made that affects many people. It can be about finding value that transforms society and finding your way to work on that material. It's not always easy because it's not really well invested in some of that purpose stuff. But there's a great model for social impact too that I'd recommend you have a look at. This is a Centre for Social Impact's model for social change. It's a great way to understand how we create social impacts and social outcomes. When I think about the best work we do, it's about creating an impact, a social good for community and for society. So when I do think about purpose, I try and find a way to work for a business that can access this kind of work or provide a platform for me to work on this. And I'll come back to how you can use your context as a platform in a moment. I was going to talk about minimum viable product and just say cake. There's a lot of talk about minimum viable product, and I just think there's something to be said for the excellent viable product. Chris Tay just created a great cake. He didn't worry about an MVP. Having heroes, I think, is important too. So Rachel Dixon is one of mine. She's a fabulous Australian design leader, digital leader. She's a very impressive woman. I'm very fortunate to count her amongst the people I know. So I just would say having heroes is quite a powerful thing. Sorry, okay, Joe. I'll skip through heroes. Genevieve Bell. Scott Galloway. Anyone follow him? If you're interested in the future of Amazon, go and watch a few of these guys' videos. One of the greatest interaction designers I can think of, this is the person I'd love to have dinner with, is Jake Barton. He designed the 9/11 memorial. It's a very, very beautiful piece of interaction design. I was going to talk about purpose, and I guess I don't work right now for a business that's really oriented around purpose, and I am. So one of the questions for me is how might I, I'm not saying that without purpose, I'm just saying like many other businesses, that sort of, social impact is not sort of high on their priorities. So the question for me is how can I get to do some of that stuff within the business I'm working in? And the thing that I would share to you that I've tried to do is create surplus in my day. And creating surplus is where I get to work on things that, because I'm create a bit more time in my day, I get to work on things that are, do have these social impact and social change dimensions. So I have side projects, but to be someone who's fairly senior in a business, you know, you've got to work some long days and you've got to pull some, pull a lot of water in your work. So one of the things I've learnt to do is get up at 4 a.m. And this is not for everyone. But when you do this, you've given yourself 2 or 3 extra hours in the day to do something related to purpose or impact, if that's what floats your boat. Ninja tricks. Now, I'd like to talk to you about ninja tricks. So this is my last slide. I think the most important thing, second last, third last, fourth last. Sorry. Something that I've also thought about a lot over time is how to be happy. And I think being with, well, I know I was listening to someone who spoke a lot about how people marry the wrong people and, you know, make mistakes about their partner in life and they're unhappy and all that sort of thing. So this is my wife. I've chosen wisely here. She's my second wife. I'm a big believer in marriage, by the way. Done it twice. And the thing I've learnt from her and from this person who was talking about how to be happy with the life you have is you need really 3 things to be happy. You need someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. So I guess that's the thought I'd leave you with. For me, it's my family, someone to love. The something to do is I have one of those little side projects that I'm working on at the moment, which is this podcast, got out the front. And something to look forward to, which is later this year we're going on a big road trip. So I don't know. I don't know if that's been helpful. But that's it. That's all, folks.
Well done. Let me get my mic.
Is there a mic? I have to worry about questions.
Thank you, Adrian, from blue tack to the meaning of life.
Well, I don't know.
That was a great subtitle. You put that on your slides.
Just version 0.1 beta.
That's a sub-solo. What I was thinking was, when Adrian was going through that, is I imagine that one of these subjects held you more than any of the other subjects and the other points that Adrian mentioned. So what I would like you to do is spend a second and think about just a second, which one was most interesting to you, was most that you engaged with most. And now put your hand up and let me know.
No one was engaged.
Yes. And let's talk about the one that really grabbed you.
Hi, Adrian.
Hello.
For the amazing talk and so honest about yourself. I was very engaged when you talked about you missed the $20,000 chance of your client because you started processing what you said in the first 1 or 2 seconds and you missed the third. It happens to me all the time, and that's something I personally love to work on and improve, to listen to the third sentence as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's there are ways, I think, to anyone here who's worked in design long enough knows that there are ways to slow these conversations down, externalize them, put them on cards and sticky notes and things like that. So I think there are answers that help us or save us from that in our practices. But still, there are times where 3 months into a project, you realise that you didn't listen to something that really mattered, and it's hurting in any number of ways. So yeah, I constantly remind myself of that.
Thank you, Wiggins. That was great.
Thank you, Beck.
You talked a lot about purpose.
Yeah.
But you were talking about it more to do with your own purpose and finding your own purpose. Have you had a situation with a client where you felt like they've kind of missed their purpose and you've had to help them down that path? And or they can't articulate it clearly enough for you to deliver something really good for them?
I think in the past I've probably made a mess. Like I've been that stormy person who goes, in one way or another, you guys are rubbish, I'm leaving. And that's because, I haven't seen a way to, within the context that I'm in, affect things for a better outcome. And I suppose that's, now that I'm 46, I'm trying to think about, no, you can't go on being a juvenile all your life. You actually have to be civil. I know, Donna, it'll come to you. And so now I challenge myself whenever I think, oh, that's something that's not ideal, not just about purpose, but whenever there's something I think, oh, it's not the way I think that ought to be done, or I wouldn't have said it that way. I try and think about what I can do within my little remit to show or navigate to another outcome. So within the business that I'm in, one of the things I'm trying to do is use it as a platform to create little programs for social impact and social change. Now, Pollen, the business I work for, has not said, oh, Adrian, hey, could you please go and create a little social impact, social change program? That'd be ever so great. They have not said that. They said, no, you need to do the work today on these wireframes, and you have these project meetings, and we're going to do some workshops and stuff like that. So I've had to create surplus, which is why I get up early, to find time to find the purpose work that I could do, but to go and find those clients. And then I use my Pollen context to say, oh, I'm from Pollen and we could do this thing with you, which is actually just me getting up early, right? We could do this thing with you. And they go, oh, someone from Pollen's going to come and help us. Oh, cool, great. So I've used my context to go and do this thing over there, which in a way has helped me answer that question. I don't know if I can persuade the business that this is the thing to do strategically with the business, but what I can do is I can go and do that work myself. Cool. That's probably not the right answer, but yeah.
Yeah, question here.
Yeah.
And it's all well and good, and probably in a similar situation to you. You can do your passion and find your purpose, and you can probably still be good for your business that pays you. But the back end of that is your family.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Getting a tired, grumpy Wiggins. How do you balance that, and how do you move on to the point where you have to say to your commercial clients, I'm going to be amazing, but you're going to have to do it within these hours, and it's no longer going to be these long nights to get something to deliver anymore?
Oh, I never work at night. Sorry, it's not a very good answer, but no, I actually go to bed really early. So I try to go to bed by 9, which is coming up soon. So that's one thing that I do, because it's about energy. I think one part of your question is about energy, and energy is the foundation of your commitment to anything. If you don't have the energy for it, you can't commit to it. So energy levels are very important, and I don't do 4 a.m. year round. I do it for about 3 months at a time, and then I've got to take a break for about 3 months, and then I can come back. It's true. You can't do it. And maintaining energy levels is I think, the key thing for me. So when I sense that I can't do it anymore, I just stop, and I don't feel bad about it. And I just don't do those things. And the thing that actually matters is the day job, by the way. Like, nothing good happens unless you're actually doing your day job. Because you don't get permission, you don't get endorsement, you don't get any of those sorts of things that you need to use this kind of context as a platform type proposition. So you've got to do your day job really well, always. There are times where you're just spent, and you don't say the right thing to your loved one, right? But I think that would happen if I got up at 6 a.m. too. So, there's that. But actually, I work with someone. Siobhan, my wife, is like that too. Like, we both like that. We actually talk at 4 a.m. So we do it that aspect of things together. So, which is strange, not for everyone.
Last orders. Yes.
So you asked kind of what really stuck, and I don't mean this as an offensive question. It's absolutely curious.
That wasn't the rude thing, was it? Okay.
It was addicting. But why did you decide to stop being a dick? And also, how did you know you stopped being a dick? And that's what I mean. Like, it's curiosity. Like, how do you?
Well, I guess you'll have to tell me. I think it's about being self-aware, firstly, and I've had to learn to be self-aware because I'm kind of joking about growing up on a remote farm with dogs, but it's kind of true. I'm an only child. I've never been a very self-aware person, and sometimes I hear myself speak, like tonight, for example. Like, oh my God. But I've learnt that too. Like, I've learnt to listen to myself and be aware of my impact on other people by seeing my impact on other people, not a positive one, the negative one. I've seen that, and I think to myself, I don't want to see that again. And if you could see yourself through the eyes of others is the challenge, right? So I do try and do that. And there are times when, even like now, this is like a constant thing for me. Now I think of a day where something hasn't gone right, and I think about what would I have said differently, what wasn't I self-aware about. As well, I think it's very important to be aware of the other person and their context to the extent you can, so that you're sensitive to them and you're saying things and doing things that are positive and are helpful to that person. So, yeah, like I have things that I cringe with embarrassment about when I think about being a dick. So it's a message to myself, really. I think you're all really lovely people. This is really just for me, that piece. But yeah, I don't know how I know. I think I know when I've gone a couple of months without making a mess. That's probably how.
You've been charming and very awkward and not a dick at all, for me.
Thank you.
Just in case you're like, was I being a dick just then? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
On that note, thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.